Go. Gerry, how are you,
Hey,
man?
buddy. Doing well.
Thank you so much for hopping on with me. For those who might be listening to this or watching this in the future, we're in the thick of the coronavirus lockdown. Um, Gerry, talk to us about your lockdown. How many days has it been since you've done jujitsu? How many days has it been since you've had a class or been a part of a class at the gym?
A couple weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, 3 weeks or so.
I know it's like we've all kind of lost count at this
Yeah.
point. I have to tell you, of all the times being off the mat for injuries or travel, there's always this kind of nagging thing going on in my mind that's like, damn it, all my training partners are getting better without me. And right now I feel kind of at ease because no one's getting, no
Well,
one's really getting any better right now. We're all taking a big break. So are
well,
you,
yes and no. If you're sitting on your ass just getting fat, then yeah, I'm gonna have an edge on you
that's true.
because I'm
That is true.
I'm getting after it.
That's right. Think on that for a second. I didn't do a proper intro. Your name, your rank, and your lineage.
Yeah, my name's Gerry Ebert. I'm a first degree black belt. Received my black belt from Rodrigo Madeiros, Richard, Joel, Andre, and I've been a black belt for almost 6 years. So that 2014, I want to say.
Mm-hmm. And what is your claim to fame? What's your style of jujitsu? If we kind of pulled together all your pals, all your gym buddies, what would they say about your style of jujitsu?
I mean, everyone's game is gonna develop over time unless you let it stay stagnant. And a lot of people they'll get into that groove where they find a couple positions that they're really really good at, and then that maybe they don't get tapped, maybe they can dominate in those positions, they just stay in those positions, and it really limits your game when you're not kind of trying to explore new things. And in order to do that, you've got to take risks, and you got to
Mm-hmm.
not worry about your ego. And it's interesting because as my games developed, I feel I mean, you'd have to ask others what they think, but
Yeah.
I feel like I have an extremely well-rounded game. I mean, I can play from anywhere. I can play from top, bottom, tight passing, fast passing, any position I feel comfortable. Now, this hindered my growth a lot, I think, especially in the earlier belts,
Mm-hmm.
because if you're trying to learn many techniques and many things, you're never going to be great at all of them. But
Mm.
over time, I think I've really, really developed a lot of tighter positions, in a lot of different things. And I feel like, especially in the last 6, 8 months, kind of everything's kind of coming full circle. So I'm
Wow.
not the guy I feel like that's going to be known for, oh yeah, this guy's great at arm bars, this guy's great at triangles. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
confident, attacking anything, any position, any limb. So I don't know. That's
Yeah.
how I feel about myself.
Here's what I hear you saying then. You are constantly evolving. Your game is constantly changing because you're probably thinking about different things, you're focusing on different things, and you're trying to be well-rounded.
Yeah. I mean, it keeps it fun,
Mm-hmm.
It keeps it fun when you're trying to, work on new techniques, see if they work for you. Not every technique is going to work for you. It's, depending on, your athletic ability at that time, the partner you're rolling against, their size, their skill level. But a lot of times, even those techniques, they might not work for you. They will work because you know them. If someone tries to apply them to you, you know what's going on.
Right. Man, I can't tell you how many times I've been in a class and maybe even as a blue belt. And I remember learning a technique and just thinking I just don't get this one. I don't get it.
Yeah.
But eventually, if you keep coming, even if that same technique is taught a year later or 2 years later, you may be at a different place in your game where it fits now. It's that puzzle piece that you kind of had in your hand and you thought you knew where it went, but it just didn't fit quite then. And then the puzzle starts coming together and now you have the right connection of other pieces nearby. That's an interesting idea, though, an interesting concept, though, Gerry, because I feel like a lot of people tend to latch on to something that they really like. You know, if you're a top player, you really like to play the top. You really like to go after omoplatas or chokes or whatever. I feel like a lot of people kind of latch on to that kind of thing. Where do you think you developed this idea of being a little more free form with your exploration of jiu-jitsu?
Maybe this is more maybe my personality when I started. I mean, when I found jujitsu, I was always good at sports. Whatever I played, varsity basketball, golf team, like any sport I did, I'd have athletic ability that would at least carry me through these sports.
Yeah.
And when I found jujitsu, that athletic ability did absolutely nothing for me. Absolutely nothing. You're completely helpless. You're completely helpless. You can't defend yourself. Obviously if you're a larger person, you can kind of slow things down a little bit.
Sure.
Where you don't get wrecked as fast, but you are going to get wrecked.
Yep.
I just kind of became pretty obsessed with it. I got the bug like a lot of people. It just keeps it fun for me to keep trying to learn new things.
So let's go back to the beginning. How did you discover jiu-jitsu?
So in around 2003, 2004, my brother and I were actually watching a lot of Pride. So we actually found Pride before we even found the UFC. So,
wow.
All these crazy fights, Wanderlei versus Crow Cop, all these crazy fights in Japan.
Yes.
And my cousin was, he was actually training jiu-jitsu with his friends in North County at Paulo Fernando's school. And there's only a few instructors. I think Paulo Fernando, Nelson, Fabio, and Rodrigo were kind of the only shops open.
Right.
And he finally brought me in. I obviously got absolutely tooled. And I was also, another 15. I was about 140 pounds then, so another about 20 pounds lighter at the time.
Yeah.
Because I came from another sport, but so I didn't live in North County. I was going to San Diego State at the time, and I said, hey, where should I train? And there's basically two options down there. There was Fabio's and Rodrigo's, and I wanted Rodrigo's, and and that's where I ended up.
Do you remember your first moment, the first time you stepped onto the mat, and what was going through your head?
Don't remember exactly. I mean, it's so foreign. I mean, they usually say the hardest part is walking through the doors. Even not just your first day, but every day. That's the hardest part. A lot of times you say you haven't trained in a couple weeks, and it's almost hard because you're not in the routine. But once you leave, you're going to be happy you went there. So I don't remember exactly how it felt. I was kind of just mesmerized by that someone could do this to another person so easily.
There was an interesting moment when I started training judo with some regularity with J-Flow about a year and a half ago. And there was a feeling that came up inside of me when I would walk from the locker room to the mat. So I was starting judo, and it made me realize that I hadn't had this specific feeling in a long time. And that was kind of that feeling of almost being afraid, right? Like when you step onto the mat to go do judo, and if you're brand new to judo, it's kind of like, ooh, I don't know what's going to happen. Am I going to look stupid because I do it wrong? Am I going to get hurt because I just didn't know how to fall right? You kind of have these apprehensions, and I realized that I didn't feel that anymore with jiu-jitsu. There was a point when I crossed over to where I was not really worried about getting smashed. Of course, it still happened, but I wasn't worried about it. Emotionally speaking, didn't create any apprehension in me. But
you had a a different start than me, because I mean, most people probably wouldn't realize this about me, but when I started, I was the guy who would get tapped or get smashed and would scream and swear and hit the mat. Like I was that guy. And, you know, we don't obviously have any of those guys at 540, but I was that guy that would lose my shit. And depending on how I did that day in jiu-jitsu would determine my mood until the next time I showed up.
No way.
There were a lot. Yeah, it was just so mentally frustrating. So there's a lot of days, you know, obviously now I take that with a grain of salt. Every day I walk through the door.
Right. Were you super competitive? Is that what it was? The heart of it?
Super competitive. Yeah. Always wanted to win no matter what. And that's one of the things that was so frustrating about the sport is it takes a long time to get good. And, you know, you got to understand, even after say you train a year, well, guess what? These guys have been training longer than you. They put in more time. You got to put in your time.
Yeah, 100%. I was texting with Dre yesterday about a video I was thinking of putting up on the 540 YouTube account. And it's a video of him training with someone I won't name, but a very well-known jiu-jitsu star. So one of our, you know, biggest athletes in the game. And I sent him a text ahead of time, said, hey, would you review this video of you training with so-and-so? And if it's cool, I'll release it on the YouTube account. And we got down this road in this conversation. He's like, oh, I don't know if I want to see this. And, you know, I said, don't be hard on yourself, man. That was 5 years ago, and your game changes a lot in 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I've only been training 8 years, and you were already a black belt 5 years ago, rolling with, you know, some top level guys. So, you know, don't be hard on yourself, man. But you're right. It's kind of crazy. Like I'm still at purple. And there were a lot of times where I felt like, you know, I'm not learning this. It's not working out for me. And then next thing I know, I start feeling pretty confident, pretty okay, because I just kept showing up. Like for me, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Like literally, I know it's super cliche. I know we all say it, but just showing up. So for you kept showing up. How many times did you train a week when you were a white belt, would you say?
Well, I'll tell you that in a second, but and what you're experiencing now is that's going to continue. But once you get to even at the higher level, so in jiu-jitsu, the interesting thing is once you start, say, you know, depending on how long it takes for you to start working on technique when you're sparring, instead of just reacting and trying to, you know, just rely on instinct.
Yeah.
Because instinct, it'll get you by for a little bit.
Sure.
But there's this constant progression of you're getting better. And then once you start to try and learn, you get worse. Ooh. And you go through this in so many cycles because all of a sudden you're trying to think instead of just react. And in that time, your opponents, you know, they're having time to get steps ahead of you.
Yeah.
So it's a constant cycle where you feel like you're getting worse. And then all of a sudden you make these huge breakthroughs. And you get better, and then all of a sudden you're going down again. You're getting worse, and that continues for a while. You know, but that's part of the learning process, and that's what makes it so difficult to get to the highest levels of the sport.
Right.
But when I started, I mean, I was, you know, I got the bug. I was training twice a day, you know, 5-6 days a week. So I was really committed. Yeah.
Well, I guess the competitive spirit in you just wanted to get better, and you knew that the only way to get better was to just do more jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. I mean, I loved it. You know, just the interesting thing about this sport is there's an infinite number of things that can happen, infinite number of techniques, combinations. So it just, I was just addicted to it.
So you're where you're at today. You're looking for a very well-rounded game where you're feeling like, you know, you want to be open to any type of position, any type of attack or defense. But in the earlier days, is there somebody or a group of people you might say influenced you the most? Was it either training partners or, you know, superstar jiu-jitsu athletes? Who would you say had a lot of influence on you in the early days?
You know, I mean, it was a lot of the guys that I trained with, and honestly, most of them and a lot of them, some of them have their own schools now. Some of them are instructors. I mean, a lot of the schools now in San Diego, you've got Clark Gracie, Alfredo, Paul Silva, me, Joel, Andre. I mean, we
Yeah.
were all grew up together training. So,
Yeah.
there was a lot of talent in our academy. I mean, in my opinion, at the time, we had the best academy, the best comp team, the toughest training, the toughest guys. So, I had a lot of great people to train and learn from at the time. And, when you started the white belt back then, a lot of times the instructor, maybe the day you come, is a purple belt. I mean, everyone for the most part was, white, blue, and a few purple belts.
Wow.
So just the landscape has changed so much where, the guys now that start training, just all the people that they have to train with now is just going to help them progress their game so much faster than we were able to back then. Just the training partners we had.
Sure.
Like we didn't get to train with all these high level guys, and the techniques were different. Everything's just evolved. So it's really interesting to see how popular the sport's become and how many more people are into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had some real moments of, I really just try to never take Studio 540 for granted, because I hear stories like this, and I know where I came from, and I was basically learning from a blue belt as my, first year was learning from a guy who was a blue belt. So I have some real moments at 540 where, when at the end of class, when the black belts line up in the middle of the mat and the rest of the class lines up against the wall, there have been many times, dozens of times, where I look out at the black belts and I'm like, damn, it can be 2 black belts, it could be 6 black belts, just depending on the class. And I always just try to really soak that in for a moment and just go like, man, I've got it so good here, to have this many black belts on the mat for a regular class. It's not even like a seminar or something, So it's a trip to think back to like the early days of Jiu Jitsu in San Diego, where your instructor might be a purple belt. Do you think that the timing for belt promotions was different back then? Or was it legit just not a lot of people?
So we would have basically 2 belt promotions a year, where, everyone would show up. And I mean, the main thing you were promoted with was your skill, and you were promoted faster, obviously, if you competed. But another thing that you were promoted on was your commitment to jiu-jitsu. So, it doesn't, for example, back then, it doesn't matter how good you were. I mean, it did matter. You weren't getting a belt if you weren't good enough.
Sure.
But if you were good enough and you weren't committed, you're not getting a belt. It doesn't matter if you show up. You show up twice a week and you tap everyone out that's your same belt. Guess what? You'll never get a belt to the next level. Like you have to show your commitment. I mean, obviously, directly from the Carlson Gracie lineage, Rodrigo got his black belt from the late Carlson, and they don't give out belts easy.
Right.
So you not only had to be at that skill level, but a lot of times, they were probably going to give you one, and then they just decide at the last minute, no, this guy can wait 6 months. That's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
So,
talk to me about rivalries. I mean, having that competitive spirit, that competitive nature, how did that play out either in the gym or with other gyms and tournaments and things like that?
I mean, that's always a good thing to have in competition. Again, the environment was significantly different than it is, say, at 540, for example.
Sure.
I mean, I would tell a lot of people, competition training then, it wasn't competition training unless someone got hurt. I mean, Yeah, I mean, gym was smaller. You get guys going 100%. Sometimes like fist fights would break out. That stuff just happens. So
and this is among teammates.
As I've gotten older, among teammates, it was among teammates, So as I've gotten older, and obviously, some days I like to be competitive. Some days I'm just down to chill and, let people, pass my guard and, work from the bottom or whatever. As long as I'm having fun, that's really what I care about. I do like those days and sometimes with guys where we're just going to battle, and, I still love that. But you got to find some balance, because you can't do that every day. You just
Right.
can't. You won't be able to keep training. You had Richard on, one of your podcasts earlier, and that's something a lot of people don't think about. Even still that are my age, how long do you want to be able to do this for?
Right.
Because he is like the guy that you want to be.
Yep.
Like if you still want to be training at that age, you're going to have to think about that at this age, because eventually the wheels are just going to come off. So, you got to find that balance.
Yeah. Have you had any of those dark valleys of injury that kept you off the mat for any amount of time? And how did you deal with it if you did?
Yeah, great question. So I want to say around 2010, I blew out my left meniscus. I was doing a drill. It was just a drill. I was actually over at Undisputed training a little with Barrett, and just doing a drill. Felt my knee. I was like, never felt this before. Something's definitely wrong. Had to get surgery. Had to get a meniscus repair. I was out for about 5 months off the mat before I could step foot, and then about 7 to 8 months later, I tore my right labrum. Tried to rehab it for several months, and had to get surgery on that, and was out for another 3 months.
Wow.
And I was 2010. I want to say a purple belt at the time.
Okay.
But like that's kind of just part of it. I would say, I always tell, some people would ask me sometime, how do you get the black belt? How do you get to that level? And you will never get to that level unless you overcome some type of adversity. It doesn't have to be an injury. It could be, a relationship. It could be, you break up with your girlfriend, or you get a divorce, or, you have financial problems, health problems. Everyone's going to have those things that happen in their life.
Right.
So it might not necessarily be jiu-jitsu related to prevent you from getting there, but you will have to overcome some major milestones in your life, and keep moving forward with the sport in order to get there.
Sure.
And, that's kind of when you start to question, when I had that second injury, like, shit, is this something that, do I really want to keep doing this? Like, is this worth it?
Yeah.
So, it's something everyone that's will come across at some point.
I found that doing jiu-jitsu actually changed the course of my life in a lot of ways, because you have those moments in jiu-jitsu where you're getting smashed, you're getting choked, and you realize what you're capable of, and you realize what you're capable of withstanding. And I think there have been a lot of moments in my life where something came up, on a personal level, and I was able to kind of take a quick moment and go, you know what? I've been through a lot worse. I've survived a lot worse on the mat. Guy who's 250 pounds smashing me, choking me, or whatever. And I survived, and I was fine. Like, I can get through this. I feel like it's given me a lot of strength in other areas of my life that, definitely don't even have anything to do with jiu-jitsu. I think that's what you're talking about, is kind of this interesting cyclical kind of thing, right? Like, you learn stuff in jiu-jitsu that helps you in real life. The stuff you learn in real life helps you in jiu-jitsu, and you keep on evolving, you keep changing, and you become a different person through it all. I think I've seen that transformation happen with a lot of my gym buddies, and certainly with me too.
Definitely. I mean,
So when you have those moments of thinking of like giving it up, like, talk me through that thought process. I mean, how deep and how serious were you thinking about giving it up at any given point?
It wasn't that long. Probably just after that second injury when that happened. I don't remember if it was days or a week or anything like that. I don't think I ever had the quit in me, but that just kind of went through my head at the time.
Sure. Yeah.
But I mean, that's why most people don't make it past blue belt, and it's not something, whether they find it's not for them, which is completely fine. But a lot of times it's just something else in their life. Something else takes priority.
Right.
or just something happens, and then, this
Hmm.
ends up just being, not that important to them. So
Hmm.
you really, what'll happen is you will find out if this is important to you, if this is that important to you or not.
Yes.
And it's not for everyone. I know
Yes.
Richard said that too. It's not for
Right.
everyone, but
Hmm.
for me, it was that important
Yeah.
to keep moving forward. Yeah.
Man, that is so true. I've definitely had those moments where I think at purple and blue, there have been a lot of frustrating moments where feeling like, just I wasn't getting any better. But um, at the end of the day, for me, I've only had those thoughts maybe a couple of times, and they were real short lived as well. Like, is this even like, do I want to sacrifice my body to this sport? And, if I'm not getting any better, why do I want to keep doing this? But those thoughts don't last for long, because at the end of the day, I love jujitsu. And I found, like, even if I had a frustrating day on the mat, usually I go home and, like, that same night, I'm like, okay, well, I'm excited. Like, I want to go train. I want to go I want to go solve the problem.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that's
Well,
bugging me, I got to figure it out. And I'm
Well,
going to
you
figure
you
it out.
you you are getting better though, and that you just don't realize it. But because everyone just forgets, everyone else is getting
Yes.
better too. You
Yeah.
are along with them,
Sure.
So you
Yeah.
are getting better.
Hmm.
It's just part of the process.
Yeah. Now, you talked about there's this kind of legendary class of athletes that came from Rodrigo's. I mean, you mentioned Clark,
Hmm.
Joel, Andre, probably many others. And I'm guessing you guys kind of all got your black belts around the same time. Is that accurate?
I mean, I'd say within 5 years, probably
Yeah.
all of us. Yeah.
So what is that like for you to be able to look back and go, man, when I was a white belt, a blue belt, I was training with these legends, and, like, just what is it like to kind of stand at this point in your journey and look back and see all the, big names that you've been able to train with?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really think of it like that.
Right.
I don't really think of it as I was training, with, legends or future legends, or,
Yeah.
I don't really think of it that way. The
Mhm.
same thing when guys come in from our seminar, come in for these seminars, the 540, and show us stuff. Like, I don't,
Yeah.
like, geek out that these guys are there. Like,
Right.
they're just like, they're just they're the same as us that just
Mhm.
love this sport. So it's
Yeah.
more of just like, who are these people? More or less, I just got to train with my friends.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't really think about, like, oh, this person is at this skill level, or they're well known for this.
Yeah.
We had at that time, compared to now, there's so many schools. Anyone that ever, when there was tournaments, anything going on like that, all the best of the best came through our school then.
Yeah.
Kind of like people do a 540, which is
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. That's cool. Now, thinking back on all the different levels, what do you think was your favorite, or yeah, what do you think was your favorite belt promotion? Maybe a moment that you felt the most proud, or that you were making the most progress.
I'd always say that I think the purple belt
Mm,
is the best belt by far. I mean, that, the average person, it takes, from starting, it's going to take them, 4 to 6 years committed to get a purple belt.
yeah.
And once you've reached that level, you have a very, very solid understanding of pretty much most positions. I mean,
Mhm.
you've committed, 5 years of your life to something. You've gotten that far. The rest isn't that far away. But I think that's just a really tough level to get to, and the skill jump from, blue to purple, there's a pretty big gap there.
Sure. Yeah.
So, you've got guys that just got their blue belts, um, that, maybe they've been training a year, and
Hmm.
then you've guys that have had a blue belt, that they've trained for 5 or 6 years.
Right.
So there's just a real, and, the learning curve can be so different in there. It's just a big skill level, and it's usually one of the toughest divisions when you're competing. The most guys are in blue
Hmm.
belt, especially at my weight, which was featherweight at the time. So
Hmm.
featherweight and lightweight, you go into these huge tournaments, you've got 70, 80, 90, 100 guys.
Yeah.
So I'd always thought purple belt was kind of my favorite belt.
It's kind of the time when you feel like you're really starting to figure some things out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You can kind of predict certain movements, responses from your of your training partners. You can kind of have a plan, have somewhat of a game plan, and yet it's still very experimental. I feel like for me, at least at Purple, it's still very experimental. I'm still, trying to figure out what my game might look like. There's certain things I know that I like, but I'm also very, open to trying other cool things. And sometimes I just have to laugh at myself because even when I'm training, that hits a limit, right? Like as purple belts, we are starting to figure some things out, right? But again, we're not brown and we're not black, so like we hit that limit in a round with somebody where something stumps us, and we just kind of are willing to try something crazy, some crazy ass move that just may make no sense, but at least we kind of have an idea of what's going on, and I also feel like this is just a personal thing, and I would love to know your opinion on it. I feel like at purple belt, it's a pretty safe area. Like you feel like you can handle yourself pretty well, but also like there's not a lot expected from you at the same time. I feel like if you're a black belt or a brown belt, there's a little bit more at stake, as far as the competitive nature goes. Like if you're a brown belt always getting tapped by blue belts or new purple belts, like that's not a good look. So, what do you think about that topic? I mean, being a purple belt, are there less expectations on a purple than a brown?
I mean, it all depends on your perspective. I mean, in my opinion, I think it counts. Obviously, a lot of people look to black belts because it's the highest belt. But I think, I look at that at every belt, and that's kind of why people shouldn't get belts before they deserve them. That's why people shouldn't hand out belts.
Right.
Because especially, if you go to another school or anything like that, you don't want to get embarrassed. But the idea is if you have this belt around your waist, and obviously, they're just belts in the end, they say they just hold your pants up.
Right.
But, having that, you should be able to represent, that you are of that level.
Right.
You need to be able to demonstrate, that you have the skill to hold this belt. So obviously, if the higher the belt is, the more skill you need to be able to demonstrate. I think every person who holds a belt, they should hold themselves accountable. Like, you don't want to get a belt just to have the belt. Right. You want to be at that level.
Yes. How would you say the dynamic changes in that sense? Like I'm thinking about, you've been to different gyms, and how does that change when you're a guest at someone else's gym, right? Like if I'm a purple belt and I go into somebody else's gym as a guest, maybe they invited me and I have a couple friends there or something, like, what do you think is a proper way to handle yourself as any belt really as a guest at someone else's gym?
Yeah, I mean, you could ask a lot of people this different questions, and they're all going to give you a different response, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the interesting thing. Even not only just I'll answer this, but just going not only just in other gyms, but in your own class. Like, what is the etiquette of how people should roll with each other? And to be honest, it's pretty straightforward to me. If you go and someone invites you over to their house, like you're a guest of theirs, you should, obey their rule, just basically be a good guest. Like don't overstay your welcome. So, you shouldn't go into someone's gym and, trying to rip someone's neck off, like right off the bat.
Yeah.
Now, if you go in there and that's the vibe you're getting, that's how everyone's training, that's one thing. But, like if you're a guest, act like a guest.
Right.
But again, this is Jiu Jitsu, and that's kind of where, it's a gray area.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it is a difficult balance to keep, right? Like you want to represent your school, you want to represent your team, your instructors well. Yeah. You want to show that you know your stuff, but you also don't want to come across as a jerk. Yeah.
And that's obviously if you're going to another gym, you're just a guest there. So obviously good to be a good guest, but that's a lot of times people don't forget this, that, at your own gym, like we have to train with each other. We have to help each other get better.
Yeah.
And, if like, if we're training easy, we're going super easy for 2 minutes, and then you just drop on a knee bar 100% and try and rip my leg off, like, just remember this. That person is going to remember that. Like, if whether they're a higher belt or a lower belt, if you pull stuff like that to someone, they're not going to help you get better. Well, number one, they're not going to open up their game and try stuff that, that they could get caught. And number two, they're never going to try and show you anything. If, especially if they're higher belt, if they, they see you doing something wrong, or, that maybe they could show you a technique that could help you out. If they see something, they're not going to try and help you. So, if you're a guy, sitting around and, it's open mat and, nobody seems to want to train with you, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. Yeah. And it's not because you're tougher than everyone. Like, I'll go against these big guys like Dre and just, like he'll put him or Jake could put the hammer on me, and, it'll be fun. Yeah. But again, like, I want to train with these guys. Yeah. Like, you want people to want to train with you. Yes. So that's going to help you get better.
Let's talk about that. I mean, you bring up an interesting topic as well, Gerry. You're probably 5'8" or so?
About 5'10".
5'10"?
5'10", yeah.
And okay, it's a little taller than I thought, but 5'10", and what do you say you walk around at your weight?
I'm about like 160. Yeah. 160 pounds, yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm not usually one of the bigger guys in the gym, that's for sure. But like coming up through the years, you mentioned being down to 140 at one point too. How do you deal with that, having, come up through the years as a potentially smaller guy, facing somebody who's, got the gym body, super ripped, higher belt, maybe even more athletic or whatever. How have you dealt with that through the years?
Well, let me tell you this. When I started, the environment that I started in is not it wasn't a good business environment to retain students. I would, I mean, it was not. Like, you would come in there and these guys, they would not be your friend. They would just try and smash you no matter what size they were. Yeah. So, it was a totally different environment then. Sure. But being a smaller person, you're going to learn a lot more you're going to work on defense a lot for the first several years. Yeah. Especially, if you're 140, 150, 160 pounds even. Yeah. A lot of times, some classes, most guys are bigger. Yeah. So, you're just going to have to work on a different part of your game, potentially. Sure. You're not going to maybe start out with offense.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. I'm thinking, as you were talking a couple minutes ago, I was thinking through some of my favorite training partners, and there are those training partners who I feel like have a very competitive, a healthy competitive spirit with, where we share kind of the same ambitions for our game, and we can ramp it up a little bit. And I feel like those are guys or gals who push me to another level. And then I feel like there's another category of training partner where maybe their ambitions in jiu-jitsu are not the same. And, for them, it's more about flowing and movement, and it's less about the competitive nature, and it's, something a little more simple for them. And that's okay too. And I think when you look around the room between rounds and you're looking for that next partner, that's something, at least for me, is always kind of happening. Like, what do I want in this next round? Do I want to be challenged in this next round? Do I want a rest round? Do I want an easy round? So maybe talk about that a little bit. How do you see that breaking out as far as a culture of your gym, the different levels of your partners, and how active of a role should you take in choosing your partners based on what you want to get out of the day?
Yeah. So a lot of it depends on kind of anytime you're on the mat, you should ask yourself, what do I want to get out of today? What do I want to get out of it? And that can change. That can change per month. That can change per year. What you want going on the mat today might be completely different than something you want a year from now. For example, when I was coming through the ranks at Rodrigo's, when I had my brown belt, I was just on a mission for that black belt. So
Mm.
if you had a brown belt or a black belt, I'm coming for you. Like, you know,
Yeah.
because a lot of times that's how you belt up, is you beat
Yeah.
guys that are the same belt and above you, and then they're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, yeah, we gotta belt this guy up. You know, and some guys have that attitude.
Yeah.
Some guys want to come in there, just get a workout. They don't want to get hurt. Some people
Mm-hmm.
don't want to go with larger opponents.
Yeah.
Some people don't want to go with smaller opponents.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it just kind of depends.
Yeah.
For me personally, you know, some days I want to get in there and I want to roll hard to absolute exhaustion, and other days I just want to cruise and not get injured.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I'm usually on the mat 4 or 5 days a week. Plus I'm doing, you know, yoga and running and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you can only do so much. So you got to have your harder days.
Yeah.
And you got to have your easier days.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I think there have been times when I look back and I remember there was a switch at some point, probably early purple, where I just said, you know, like there were some people that maybe I avoided because they were, you know, bigger, stronger, more athletic or whatever. And I just felt like maybe they rolled too hard or something. And I remember thinking at one point, I just said to myself, you know what? This is a combat sport. This is about learning how to fight. So why am I holding myself back? I'm holding myself back from learning how to fight, right? Like if I'm declining or avoiding a round with somebody who's better than me, stronger than me, bigger than me, then I'm actually cheating myself. I felt like I was cheating myself because I'm here to learn. So, you know, there are days like that where I say, okay, anything that comes my way, I'm going to take it. I'm not going to worry about, you know, that big beefy black belt asking me to roll. I'm just going to take it. Like I'm not going to worry about it. And I'm not going to be, you know, I'm not going to try to avoid any of that. And then other days,
Yeah,
like
but there's,
yeah,
but again, if you're, the thing is though, if you get hurt,
right,
you're not going to be coming back tomorrow. So
100%.
there's a difference between going with larger, you know, higher level guys that they'll put massive amounts of pressure on you, but they're not going to try and hurt you.
Yes.
Then there's guys that, you know, you're not worried about rolling, you're just worried about getting hurt.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and the thing is yeah, I mean, you know, and I've believe me, I made all these mistakes. I've had all the injuries.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times you go down that route and you're not coming back the next day. Maybe your neck's sore and you're out for 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know, you're coming back in. So was that worth it? That's up to you to decide.
Yeah, totally. And on that topic, I'm curious what you think. I mean, you come from kind of a traditional school, but you're here at 540 now. What is your thought about lower belts asking black belts to train?
I mean, I don't think there's a problem with it at all. It's kind of an older tradition, I would say.
Yeah.
You know, we can obviously, I think they could say no if they want,
right.
You know, and it doesn't mean that, you know, that they're afraid of you. You don't know.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with asking someone if they want to train though.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a problem with it at all.
Yeah. I've always kind of been that mindset, but I was also pretty much raised at 540 where I felt like that was always an open door. It was always okay to ask, but like you said, they have every right to just decline if they want to. But I mentioned it.
And again, if you're, I was saying, if you're, you know, if you train a lot and, you know, when you guys do training class or something like that, yeah, and you know, you're fun to train with, then a lot of the higher guys, they're going to want to keep training with you. So it's not going to be a big deal to ask them. It's more like asking your friend to train, not asking the black belt to train, you know?
That's a great point. I think that's a huge point in this topic because, you know, I think if I'm a guest at somebody else's gym and I see 2-3 other black belts on the mat and I ask them to train, I can see how that might be maybe not, you know, cool because they're looking out for their own game. They want to, you know, train with whoever they want to train with and maybe they don't know me or whatever. But I feel like at our home gym, you're right. I feel like those guys, like, you know, asking any of you, any of our instructors at 540, any of you guys who have a black belt, asking any of you to train. It feels more like I'm asking a pal, a buddy, a friend to train more than it is necessarily the black belt. But occasionally we have people that come through 540 who are notable people. And, there was one time I did ask a black belt to train, and then they did train with me, but then they also told me at the end, hey, you shouldn't ask a black belt to train. That's, you should wait for them to ask you. And I was like,
yeah, at the same time though,
yeah,
that this is our school, not theirs.
exactly. That was my thought too. I'm like, who are you to tell me what to do in my own gym? Like, this is our place,
Yeah, exactly. So, there's just, I mean, we're a lot more open than most gyms. There's a lot of deeply rooted politics that go back to jiu-jitsu, and the reason is, I mean, there was only so many schools back in the day.
Yeah.
There's only so many places. It was a very traditional, it was almost secretive, it's not like you can go learn. There's not all this shit on YouTube.
Yeah.
It was almost like a secret thing that nobody knew about, If you told someone, hey, I trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they'd have no idea what that is. This was like the early UFC. No idea. So, there's a lot of politics in Jiu-Jitsu that are deeply rooted, and, again, it's all about evolution, and that's one thing I like a lot about our school.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, me too. Did you have a point when you were a brown belt that you knew that your belt promotion was coming and that it was imminent?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I wasn't, it was kind of a relief to get, but it was almost like, just give me the belt. Like I put in, so much work to get here.
Yeah.
So it was time. It was time.
Yeah. How did that go for you? Who gave you your belt, and what was that like? Do you remember? Of course you remember, but what was that like for you?
Yeah. So it's from Rodrigo. I actually got every single belt from him too.
Wow.
White all the way through black. Wow. So a lot of people move to different cities, or, they start with one instructor and go to another. So I was fortunate enough to get all my belts from one instructor. It was cool to get there. It was about time. I didn't feel like it was a huge surprise for me, just the level I was at and how much I was training. So I would say some of the other, probably, like I said, purple belt was probably a lot, I don't know, maybe more of a surprise, or just happier to get there almost. Yeah. I feel like just getting those belts, you realize if you're committed to this for not belts, once you get to a certain level, it's inevitable you'll get there. It's just a matter of time.
So what keeps you going today now that you have your black belt? Obviously, it's the game that never stops evolving. But what are some things that happen in your mind that keep you really motivated to keep coming back and training?
I don't know. Just for me, it's really mentally just healthy for me to, I'm a morning guy, so I usually train 3 to 4 mornings a week. It's great to just go in there, train, and then go straight into work. Kind of takes the edge off everything. Yeah. So, again, it just, the better you get, the more fun it gets, I feel like. And it once you keep getting, it just continues to get more fun and more fun, which is it's crazy, but it actually does.
That's awesome. Looking back though, it sounds like you've had a very focused history in jiu-jitsu, but looking back, is there anything that you maybe would have listened to a little earlier on in the process, or anything that you would tell a younger version of you to do in your journey?
Yeah, something that I would probably tell everyone is this is your martial arts journey. It doesn't necessarily have to apply to jiu-jitsu. But it's your journey. You need to decide the path that's best for you. And I know this is something that you kind of, I think, mentioned about maybe in one of your other podcasts. For example, like loyalty, for example. Once you're in this belt system, it's interesting because you can really compare it to, for example, you see these documentaries on Scientology and how it's so difficult for people to leave. And,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's all you know, that's all around you. All your friends are there. We forget that a lot of times our training partners, we see more than our family. We're seeing these guys, we're seeing these guys and gals 4 or 5 days a week, sometimes twice a day.
Yeah.
Like, we're spending more time with a lot of these people than we spend with anyone else.
Man, that's so true.
So you build all these, these relationships, but like, you need to decide like what is the best path for you. And and that's something that you shouldn't let anyone else tell you. It's 100% on you.
Yeah.
And it's never going to be the same for everyone.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. That's profound, Gerry. That hits home, that resonates. That's really good, man. So thank you for that advice. Yeah. But man, I really appreciate you being on with me. This has been a great conversation. And man, the whole purpose behind doing these interviews really was that I feel like, a lot of us lower belts, we kind of hold all of our black belts up on a pedestal. We kind of all look at you in a certain light. And there's something that's really fun about exploring the earlier days. When you think about your instructors as, wow, like they were a blue belt once too. Like, wow, they were trying to figure things out just like I am. And so I hope that those who listen to this and watch this are, encouraged, and that they find some wisdom through all of this. So man, I appreciate you being on with me today.
Yeah, you got it, man. And I got a lot out of, the other interviews you did with, Richard. I've known Richard for a long time.
Yeah.
So I got a couple nuggets out there that I never heard from him. Jess, I didn't, know as much about her. So it's kind of a cool way to get to know them as well. So I'm taking something out of it as well.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. Well, man, I hope
Jake was all right. Jake was all right.
just all right. But he's so mellow. It's like, Jake, are you awake, bro? No, we got to have Jake back on, because there were a lot of comments about like, oh, you got to tell this story and that story. And I was like, I wish I would have known about these. More stories that Jake.
We can do story time another time about people getting their choked out, getting their limbs broken. We can do story time another time.
We should do like a themed story time, like the worst moments of jiu-jitsu, or the scariest moments, or I don't know. We'll come up with something, man. But
we need like a 4 or 5 hour podcast for that.
Totally. Man, you're awesome. Hopefully we'll all get back to the gym soon. I mean, it's this whole lockdown thing it can kind of drive me crazy sometimes if I think about it too much, but man, I can't wait to be back in the gym with everybody, learning and just getting my sweat on. And I hope that day comes soon.
Yep, for sure, man. Well, good chatting with you. I'll see you on the mat soon, I'm sure.
Thanks, Gerry. Take care, man.
You got it.